Welcome back, everybody, into Bill's Chat. I am Josh McCarty. With me tonight, as always, is Luka. Luka, how are you doing tonight?
It's good to be back behind the mic. It has been a long time, Josh. Last time it was you and I. We were talking about the schedule release and how we felt about it that way. So obviously a lot has happened, at least in both of our lives and everything like that, just as we've been enjoying the summer mostly and everything. But this is where we're trying to get back in the swing of things here. And, you and Stokes had an episode that dropped last week and everything like that. On the one side, we're going to talk about a little bit more, but lots happened since. We've been enjoying our summers. Hopefully everyone else has as well. And I'm ready to talk some Bills football tonight.
Yeah, it has been a while. Thanks again to Stokes for filling in last week as we broke down the offensive side of the football for the Buffalo Bills, talked about any concerns we have, confidence level in the various positions. Later on this episode, Luka and I will be doing the exact same thing on defense. We'll also throw in kickers, punters, and long snappers, although I don't think Reed Ferguson should be a concern for anybody. He's pretty solid at what he does. But Luka, something very interesting did happen since the last time we recorded together, and it came in the form of us meeting up in person. I had a family trip that one of the reasons why we haven't been as active is there's been some stuff going on with my family, and we had to go out to Vermont to visit some family for some situations going on. But on the way to Vermont, we made our way through Buffalo, had dinner with Luka and his lovely wife. And Luka, you kind of gave me as quick of a tour of Buffalo as you could, at least when it comes to food. And I appreciate you. And this is probably a better conversation for you because you even told me how to order the Labatt Blue that I got. But it was definitely a fun evening.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's obviously been something that even before we started this whole podcast thing, we've known each other through, Madden online communities and all that stuff. We've covered that in the past. Everyone should be well aware of that. If you're not, welcome. But long story short, out of, something like that, fortunate thing came up. And I remember you had messaged about it and it was like, hey, we're going to be coming through Buffalo. If you can make that work. I immediately told, my wife, Sammy, I was like, hey, it wasn't even a question of do you want to. It was like Saturday night, we're going to be meeting up. We'll figure out where for dinner. We're going to be meeting Josh, his wife, and their daughter and stuff like that. And we met up and had a great time. I introduced you, in a quick fashion, kind of to the Cliff Notes. Luckily, we went to Barbell, a place which would provide you something of higher quality in these regards, but a nice mini beef on weck, proper wings, things of that regard. You were upset. My takeaway was how obsessed you were to try what a pizza roll was. As someone who low-key is not the biggest fan of pizza rolls, I find it a little bit redundant. And it's like, if I want pizza, I'm just going to order pizza. But regardless, your fascination with that, as you said, you were like, you know what, I'm going to have a beer. And then you're like, I'm going to have a Labatt. I was like, just say you want a blue light. Like, you just don't have to say the Labatt part. It's just blue light. Everyone knows what you want. Stuff like that. It was fun to kind of, I told it to you in person. It was fun and interesting to me to see someone who's not from the area, who's not familiar with, kind of what goes on and how this area ticks, to kind of experience it as you were with your family and everything. Cause it seemed like you were enjoying yourselves, of course, and things like that. And it's like, it's something where I know I don't take full advantage of it. I'm born and bred here. It's like one of those things where it's a familiar feeling to me. It's something where I'm just accustomed to knowing the East Aurora area, the Orchard Park area, the Amherst, Tonawanda, Kenmore, Cheektowaga, blah, 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 all that stuff. Niagara Falls, you went to visit up there while you were here. And it's something where it's like, it's right around the corner for me. But at the same time, I honestly can't even tell you the last time I went up there. I've been up there numerous times in my life, but I can't even remember the last time. It's just, we're a little bit spoiled in a regard where we have something as massive as something like that in our backyard. But overall, it was fun to see. We had a great night, of course, with dinner and stuff like that. It was interesting to misunderstand what a hot wing is to an individual not from the area compared to someone that is from the area, because clearly there is a divide there. But it was great. It was great to meet all of you guys, finally meet up in person. Luckily, you are exactly the same way you are behind the camera as you are in person, which not a surprise to anyone overall, but it was definitely a fun evening when we met up for dinner.
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. Sammy was great. You were great. I will say Luka posted a picture of our meetup to our Twitter account, Bill's Chat Pod on Twitter, X. And Luka mentioned the hot sauce thing. So Luka, ahead of time, I was like, look, here's the checklist of things I want to try. The night before, I was 2 nights in Buffalo. The night before, we got in late and we were hungry. And I was like, Luka tells me all the time that Buffalo pizza is good, even though like nationally, you don't hear about Buffalo pizza. You hear about like New York pizza, Chicago pizza. But Luka's like, no, no, no. Our pizza is really good. So I was like, well, let me order a pizza. So the first place I called, they were like, do you want thin or double crust? Double crust is what the term is, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just standard crust, but yeah, sure.
Yeah, double crust. And I panicked and I was like, let me call you back. And I told my wife, I was like, they asked a double crust. I just want like a regular pizza. So I called another place and they said the same exact thing. Do you want thin or double crust? And I'm like, this must be a Buffalo thing. So of course I tried the double crust and it was the thickest non-deep dish pizza I've ever had. Now, I'm not saying like super thick, but it's like dough. You guys are all probably used to it. Dough, sauce, dough again. I told Luka, if I'm hungry, especially like on a road trip environment where I've been bored in the car all day, I can polish off, half of, if not like 5 slices of a large pizza by myself. I had 1 slice of this thing and I was done. That's how thick it was. My wife had a half of a slice and she was done. It was so good. And then we got pizza logs that night. And the pizza logs were overcooked. I could tell they were overcooked, but I could just tell from the potential of what they were that they were good. So we got to Bar Bill the next night, met up with Luka and Sammy, and I was like, okay, here's what I want to do. I for sure want to get wings. I want to get pizza logs, but I've also heard that this beef on weck is amazing. And he's like, perfect. They have an appetizer beef on weck you can get. They have an appetizer pizza log you can get. I usually get the hot wings. And I was like, well, shoot, if you get the hot wings, I'll get the hot wings. Okay. So what I learned is Buffalo, y'all, all of you watching from Buffalo, your definition of hot is not the same thing as Midwestern Josh here's definition of hot. It was very hot for me. And the picture Luka posted, it's funny because like his wife and Luka were making fun of me for like keeping my arms down like this in the photo if you're watching on YouTube because I had pit stains going on, but you can even see around the neckline that I have sweat going. Yeah. And I was just it was very, very good, but and I look over at Luka and he's just like one after another, like not even bothering him. Meanwhile, I'm like grabbing everybody's drink on the table, trying to get as much liquid in me as I can. But it was a good time. It was definitely awesome to meet up with you because I wanted to come into town for your wedding, but then it just happened to be like the same week that we had a vacation planned. So it was good to meet up with you. And definitely not the last time for sure. I know I want to get back out there before they change stadiums over. Did spend the day in Buffalo beforehand. We went to Niagara Falls, like you said, went to the Bills Pro Shop, which was cool to be there, but holy cow, you want to talk about markup. We got a few things there, and then Luka definitely gave me the tip about make sure you get your hats there. So I got this hat and a couple hats behind me there. But then I will say the quality of the clothing is pretty good because my wife was like, we're in Buffalo. If you go to Walmart, you can probably still get Bill stuff and it'll be a lot cheaper. The shirt I'm wearing here is one I got at Walmart, significantly cheaper, but just the fabric, it's uncomfortable. It's like heavier fabric. And so at least the Pro Shop has good quality stuff. But man, I was telling Luka, it's so cool to be in Buffalo because, and I told my daughter this too, the people in Buffalo are so proud of where they're from. And that's just not what I'm used to. I'm from the St. Louis area. I've been to Buffalo twice in my life. Once to see a game in 2003 against the Colts, and then this past weekend with Luka. And I just love how much pride everybody has in their area. And it was like Luka treated us to dinner. And it was almost, and the vibe I got was like, no, you're like a guest in our town, even though we were just having dinner. We weren't even at his house. It's like you were so happy to show me what the Buffalo experience was. It almost like you felt like it was your obligation to treat us. And that wasn't a cheap dinner. And
yeah, it wasn't crazy either, though.
The vibe of Buffalo, from being there, is there's so much pride in that town that I can't imagine, Luka, what a Super Bowl or a Stanley Cup parade would look like in that city. And I'm obviously a diehard Bills fan, so I would love to see it be a football one. but just for the city itself, man, I hope they get a parade sometime soon because they deserve it.
Oh, it's something. It's So the only thing I can really remember as a child even is obviously the 99 Cup run where it fell short due to no goal. But even afterwards, you had a large crowd up here for the post to that, and the infamous Lindy Ruff kind of just screaming no goal in the mic, kind of emphatically embrace that moment for what it was and kind of be like a big middle finger to the NHL, who then changed that rule off of it, as all of us are aware of, to kind of like shoo it under the carpet. Effectively, it's one of those things where even seeing that reaction, yeah, of course, you grow up from this area, there is a palpable kind of feeling that is there when you are born here, when you are raised here. If you live, even if you're not born here, but you have lived here for a long period of time. My wife has been here since she went to college at DUval, and she has already been infected by that kind of warmth and kind of the pride you have for being in this area. It's a large, small city kind of deal where it feels like it has tons of things you can do, a lot of areas you can go, but at the same time, it's got that small town vibe to it everywhere you go as well. And everyone kind of embraces each other when you're kind of from here. But at the same time, if you're coming into our city, it is the city of good neighbors. It's kind of that situation where it's just embedded in you to let people see how much you care about it and let them enjoy it as best as they can. And that's kind of what I even meant. As I said before, it was fun seeing someone experience just what it is to be in this area that's not from here. And, you don't come here often. It's like, it's a little bit different here. And you guys got the full tour. It was one of those things where we were even messaging ahead of time where I was like, okay, yeah, you want to look in this area for a hotel or this area, because then you have these things going on. Oh, if you're going to go to the falls, what do you want to do for dinner? Ended up at Barbell. And if we're going to Barbell, we're not going to the one on Main Street in the North Towns. That would have been more convenient for myself. We are going to go to East Aurora because that's the proper one. We're going to go there. You're going to get the real experience. Here we go. Stuff like that. It's, that's stuff that I think any other person from this area would also do. It's not an individual thing. And this is an area where, yeah, if a championship were to come, regardless from the major sport that it comes from, it will be absolute scenes. And I think even in that regard, I will say, I think national media even understands that. If you get that vibe as runs are happening from like your McAfee's or even any other larger, media out there, where essentially they get that feeling. Everyone knows, especially in the NFL, you always hear about the stories about like even the Patriots as they were rolling through everyone. They always circled the game in Buffalo because it was different. It's a different environment. It's a different place, stuff like that. It meant more to them to come in here and kick our ass year in, year out, because it's just a different kind of place that the people have created among us. And it's a special place. It really is. It's hard all the time. We talk about, me and my wife, if other opportunities, people always ask, would you move and stuff? And it's like, of course, if the opportunity was right, you would move. But it's like, there's a comfortable feeling when you are from here that it's like, it would be hard. You would have to be the absolute right reason to, and stuff like that, because it's just so great living here for a lot of reasons. And you just deal with the shitty weather outside of it in the wintertime, because if you're born and bred here too, to me, I don't even care. Like, it sucks when you get your big storms, but overall, you just deal with it. You can drive in it, and you go other places where they can't handle it, and you kind of laugh at it a little bit. But if the championship were to come where everyone could embrace that, and that parade, everyone's unified for that parade, it's gonna be absolute scenes. It's gonna be incredible, because we just all love this city, we all love the team, and it's just how it goes.
And for me, it was tricky because living where I live, which is just outside of St. Louis on the Illinois side, I'm an out of town Bills fan, so I am conditioned. If I see a Bills hat, if I see a Bills shirt, I see a Bills anything, and there's more of it than there used to be because AJ Epinesa is from the town I'm from. He went to high school there, so people have become more Bills fans in my area. The Epinesa family is a pretty big deal here. But it's just, you see Bills, you go Bills. You just do it. Like whether you're at the YMCA, whether you're at Walmart, you say go Bills. Like you don't even think about it. I had to re-trigger my brain because holy cow, Luka, middle of the summer, non-football months, you couldn't go anywhere without seeing Bill stuff. We were at Chick-fil-A having lunch after being at the pro shop, and every table, at least one person had Bill stuff on.
Yeah.
I'm from St. Louis, baseball heaven. Okay. And when you want to talk about like the best baseball fans in the world, I will tell you St. Louis Cardinal fans rank up there with the best baseball fans you could think of, up there with the Cubs, the Yankees, whatever you want to call it. You don't get that here. If it's baseball season and people are downtown ready for a baseball game, yeah, it's a sea of red. But like on a random Tuesday in February, if you go to a Chick-fil-A, is every single table going to have somebody with a Cardinal shirt on? No. There was it was a college town atmosphere. And I know that's probably an eye roll for people from Buffalo because I hear it a lot. It's like it's college town, but I mean that as like the ultimate compliment. On the way back home, we stayed in Columbus, Ohio, another college town, right? And there's just such a charm about that. And I totally understand what you're saying. Just 2 days there, and I just felt the vibe. I felt how connected that area was. And I can only imagine being from that area, what that does to you, what it means to you, and why it's so tough to leave if you have to leave for business or family or whatever. And it is interesting having been to a number of stadiums, whether it's Tennessee, Indianapolis, Kansas City, St. Louis, Detroit, and then driving through like Cincinnati, Cleveland, and it's like the stadiums for the NFL, it's like in downtown, and like the whole scene around the stadium is like set up with like downtown parking. And then in Orchard Park, it's like you're driving through a small town and then all of a sudden you're at the stadium. It is such a cool vibe. I even prepped my daughter for this, and I had to remember back to 2003, the last time I was there. It's like you're not going to expect to see a stadium when you see it because you're driving through a neighborhood, and then all of a sudden you see a parking lot, and then there's a stadium. It was so neat. It's so unique, and I loved it. I can't wait to get back. Speaking of college town atmosphere, Luka, big week coming up for those of us. Man, it's been a while since 2013, NCAA 14.
Yep.
If you're a video gamer or a sports gamer of any type, and I can tell you for a fact, there are people that have gone out and bought PlayStation 5s and Xboxes for this game. NCAA 25 drops this week, and this is not a video game podcast, but for sports gamers of a certain age, and I feel like you and I are like the perfect age range for this, this game has all the nostalgia. You add into the fact, and you and I can speak to this pretty eloquently, like Madden has been kind of on a steady decline of disappointment. A lot of that probably has to do with the lack of competition in the football genre, but there's such a buzz around this game. Everything you see about it, it looks like it's going to come through. How big of a week do you think this is, Luka, for sports gaming in general?
Massive. This is, I don't know. I'm trying to think of how it even is. I don't think I've even ever experienced anything like this, or it doesn't feel like we have experienced anything like this, where an entire community that is just the sport fan has been excited singularly for something that will just bring people together. And I don't mean it in some cliche way, but quite literally, people are going to be coming together and playing online dynasty mode and doing things for whatever individual reasons they have. The nostalgia, just to have something different that'll of that, football variety. Like you said, Madden hasn't had a competitor. Somehow EA is putting out a competitor of their own product in NCAA, where it's gone as far as where they need to attach Madden to the deluxe version in order to hopefully kind of recoup what they probably expect to lose with Madden 25 this season, because there is going to be a huge uptick in all gamers that are even remotely interested in football, in college football, and just pride in their colleges, respectively. They are all going to be playing this game. It's going to be a massive, massive event this week. You're already seeing last week where a lot of major universities, more specifically ones with massive e-gaming communities and e-gaming I don't even know, teams, I guess. I don't know how that works. It's a senior moment, Josh, where I don't know how the e-gaming world, in esports world works in colleges, which is a very prominent thing now. It's like, if that wasn't a thing, of course, when I was in college, but overall, schools like that, they actually got an early preview last week. They had the teams themselves. I saw, of course, from an ASU perspective, a lot of those players and athletes playing it and kind of giving their reactions and all that kind of stuff. I know that happened universally across the NCAA landscape. And that was happening. Now you're seeing clips come out with all of your major content creators, such as like PMT with Barstool, who obviously put kind of NCAA 14 on a pedestal during COVID when they were doing the Coach Ruggs situation and all of that, which was incredible content during that kind of bleak time. But overall, you have them doing stuff, and other gamers and creators out there that are playing the game right now that they have early access to and kind of putting out the content. And it's electric. It's joining so many worlds into one place that I cannot wait. I will say I didn't buy the deluxe model. I don't want Madden 1, so that I don't see the value in that. And 2, I can wait 4 more days. As hard as it might be, I will wait. But overall, there's probably a lot of people that bought the deluxe and or the EA Play, or the EA Pass or whatever it is,
right,
to get the early access because they're just itching so much to play this game again. Because what I think college in general does is it truly pulls from like a core fan, and it does something where it's not as, I'm just going to call it this, but I don't truly mean it for as negative as it might sound, is it's not as commercialized. It doesn't feel as kind of fabricated. It's like when you're a fan of a school, like I am an ASU fan through and through. One, I attended there at one point, and even before then, I was always a fan. I mean, I can go back to like Ryan Terrain in the backfield with Sam Keller or Rudy Carpenter throwing the ball to Derek Hagan and Zach Miller at tight end. I just rattled that off the top of my head because I remember as a kid staying up till 3 a.m. watching those games, even though they were finishing 7-5 on the year or whatever it was. I'm diehard watching Reggie Bush run all over them and just ruining my entire Saturday, things like that. But I have an affinity for ASU that I don't even think professional sports will ever be able to recuperate. It's just a different style of fandom. It's to the core, as rooted as it can be, and it's just awesome. And on top of it, even if you're not a massive college person, it's a different format of football that is going to be more enjoyable. You're going to have a lot more disparity in when it comes to your skilled players to your not so, your online connected modes with being dynasty. There's a heavier turnover. We talked about it offline before this episode, before we started recording. It's like, if you are, you have a superstar in Madden, they're going to play out their career. You're going to have them for 10 plus seasons if you go that far. It's like in college, the turnover is heavy. You're going to have that guy for 3 to 5 years, however it works. We don't know yet, but overall, like, it's going to change quick. And I think that makes it more fun. It makes it more unpredictable. It makes it enjoyable to be in those online communities and play it with whoever you end up playing it with. So I think the end user, the consumer, is just a larger window for this game that it's hyped unlike anything else we've ever seen in sports gaming specifically. That, yeah, it's a big week. And I mean, as you can tell now, for speaking for 6 minutes on it or whatever it's been, very, very hyped.
Sports gaming to me has, I want to say, gone downhill. And I'm somebody that, the gaming I do is sports. I know you venture out, you do a lot more of like the more popular gaming besides some of the sports games. But to me, sports gaming has become such a singular focus on the card collecting modes, the ultimate teams, the diamond dynasties. And for those of you that aren't as familiar, it's essentially like you buy the game and there's a mode in there where you can build a fantasy team. So like Peyton Manning can be your quarterback, Barry Sanders can be your running back, Jerry Rice can be your wide receiver, Randy Moss. You can build a team, whatever you want, but they cost currency within the game. And that currency can either be earned through playing or it can be earned by swiping your credit card and buying more money. And that's where the focus has been. And what I think is so pure about this college game is this feels like a throwback for those of us that are excited about it, for like the offline sports gamer to really dive into that offline dynasty mode again. And, I don't know how much I'm going to live in offline dynasty. I'm still an online head-to-head guy and I'm excited about that. But I do think there's something pure about it. And you mentioned it, like the college environment is second to none. I'm not the biggest college guy. I'm more of a pro guy. I had to kind of make that decision when I had kids. I'm like, I can't spend both days of the weekends being a slug. That's not a great look. But like the crowd going nuts, the band, it's just, it's beautiful. And I think NCAA has always kind of been ahead of Madden when it comes to having home field advantage built into the game. And the way that I think they're pushing Madden to be the best version of itself, how one of the biggest drawbacks to football games is you're only controlling one player with 11 players on the field. So there's ways to exploit it. Well, they figured out a way where you can control every player on the field with a simple click of the stick. So I'm excited for this game. I'm excited to see, right now it's a tidal wave. And how much of that's going to wear off when the nostalgia piece of that is gone? Because there is going to be an initial surge of nostalgia and then a percentage of people that realize, like, I don't really like video games anymore. Like, that was 10 years ago, and I'm remembering how much I liked it back then, but now I don't. But like, does it withstand the test of time? I sure hope so, because I love football. It's my favorite sport. And I feel like as far as video games go, it's like my least favorite sport to play in video games because of what's happened to Madden. So hopefully Madden becomes better because of this, but ultimately, hopefully this game is the game that changes the landscape of sports. And I can't wait, Luka. I'm excited. And you're promising what, 1 or 2 championships for Arizona State?
I mean, depending on the online dynasty I play in, it could be tough. I mean, I know we both know some of the individuals I'm trying to get in one online dynasty. That will be a tough situation to get. And I know some of them listen to these, Josh. So I'm not trying to say anything because I don't think that will actually happen, but I will have fun along the way because it's just, it really is. There's something special about it. And as you even kind of mentioned, offline, they have so many modes that are actually enjoyable offline, and it doesn't feel kind of like simple, repetitive nonsense where it's, it actually, there is kind of enjoyment in it that I do not find myself to be an offline gamer at all. It's very hard for me to play like story mode style games and things. It does not pull my interest, but something of this variety, going back to NCAA and what it was even then, I know for a fact it will be enjoyable. So it will be interesting to see all that overall. I do think you're absolutely spot on too. Like, some individuals will have the nostalgia wear off and be like, oh yeah, I don't have the time and or the care anymore for this, like I did 10 years ago plus. But I think overall it's going to be a lot of fun. There's so many things you can do with it. And it's just a big thing for the sport of football right now. Like, to draw that interest back in. You know what I will find interesting is, with this coming out, I will be very curious to see what happens when it comes to audiences watching college football week in, week out now. Because I do think, even with all of the things we've said, with all of the people that are out there, there's alums everywhere. I mean, a lot of people go to college, right? But at the end of the day, like, I feel like there's still people out there that are just football gamers or football fans. There's NFL only fans out there that are going to be playing NCAA. I have a close friend that is an acquaintance of both of ours that is an NFL person. They are not a college football person. They don't sit there and watch college football until it's like college football playoffs. I can see a world where the college game just all of a sudden pulls in, maybe for the marquee game every week now, whatever it might be, just because of that. And I'm very, very, very curious to see if somehow this grows the already massive fandom of college football, and to kind of see where those kind of viewership numbers lead due to this game, because I think there will be something there just due to all the hype that's around it.
I agree. It can't hurt, because you're right. Like, if you start doing something and you find interest in it, you seek it out. And that's what's going to happen, I think, with college football. It happens if you're playing NBA 2K. It happens in anything you do. And I'm just hopeful. I'm very hopeful for what this game can be. And I'm hopeful for those folks that really have been waiting for a game like this. Luka, it is almost 30 minutes into this podcast, and we've yet to really talk about the Bills. But Bills training camp is about a week and a half away. It starts but the day you're listening to this on July 15th. We're recording this on July 14th, by the way. It is 9 days away. So, at least when everybody reports. But we have another side of the ball to talk about. We talked about offense last week, and we're going to talk about the defensive side of the ball, concerns we have. As of today, the Bills still have about $10 million in cap space, Luka, largely because of the Tre'Davious White post June 1 transaction that happened. They have signed their rookie class. Are you surprised that money has not been allocated for some additional help? Or, based on the way this offseason went, where it was a clear the decks kind of offseason, Bean is really trying to keep the books clean going forward, is this the direction that you kind of expected it to go?
I won't say it's the direction that I expected it to go. I felt like there might have been one more push to kind of bolster the roster wherever it might be, with that money once it clears up. It's something they kind of did at this portion of the offseason a little bit before it, like the post June 1st. They did it last year when we signed, Leonard Floyd.
Yeah.
Blanked for a second there. When we signed Leonard Floyd, just to bolster that D end position, especially understanding the Von Miller injury return and everything with that. So I kind of felt like, due to a little bit of repetition, and especially with the success of that signing, maybe that was going to happen. What I will say in addition to that is it's not like I'm disappointed that they haven't done that. I think you hit it perfectly. It is that season where they're reshuffling the deck. They've obviously had this youth movement a little bit. They let go of a lot of the aging vets and just the individuals that were kind of the marquee, or the players we've gotten used to for these previous runs, and we're resetting things a little bit here. And overall, we've had that issue where in season maybe one injury or two comes up, and at that point in time it might be nice to bring in someone or something like that, and you just don't have the money, and or you just want to keep the money where it is so that once it gets to next offseason, we know where we're going to sit with the cap, and we're going to have plenty of room to do whatever it is we need to do to maybe make an additional push on top of what we now currently have with this roster and the incoming draft class and the youth that we have here. So I'm okay with them kind of standing pat with where it is, because it allows you to kind of still have that future look for next season. But on top of it, it's not like they're sitting on a bad roster right now. And if something were to happen and there's some available vet kind of on the couch that could come in and kind of fill that hole that is created due to injury or whatever it might be, you do have the cap to facilitate that come the season. So it's one of those kind of break glass of a case of emergencies. That glass is a pretty big piece of glass that you can kind of chunk away if you need to, just in case, and you're not putting your future in, any sort of detriment because of it. So I'm not upset with it. It is, I will say, again, to kind of wrap it up, I did think they would do something, but I don't think it's a negative to Bean and McDermott that they haven't done anything with that money. The money does not need to burn a hole in your pocket. Just because you have cap space doesn't necessarily mean you need to spend it. It's a different conversation, it feels like, a little bit with the Sabres, but for the Bills, the roster feels okay and fine. They should be able to still hit, your 10 plus wins with what they have in place. And now you have cap space that you can dip into if need to, due to injury, and or let it go into next season and next year's cap space, where you can then kind of really evaluate the free agent market, evaluate the trade market, whatever it is, and have a plethora of cap space to kind of accommodate whatever it is.
My issue with and I agree with everything you said. My issue with where they could spend the money is I don't feel like this is a team that necessarily needs more like B- talent. And I think that's what's available. And Stokes and I talked last week about the wide receiver situation. You're like, yeah, this wide receiver group, it's not the best wide receiver group we've seen in Buffalo. Like, this is a group that, not too long ago had an all-pro in Cole Beasley, an all-pro in Stephon Diggs, and then John Brown also. So I look at this group and I'm like, yeah, you could really add to it, but what are you going to add to it? There's not Hunter Renfrow, I don't think, comes in and really adds to this group. To me, he's just another version of what they already have, which is kind of a guy. And they have guys. They have Khalil Shakir. They have Curtis Samuel. They have that young guy in Keon Coleman that you're hoping can take off. They have another young guy in Justin Shorter that you might still be holding out hope for. They have a guy that has been disappointing, but also has a ton of potential in Chase Claypool. They have journeyman guys that play strong roles in Marquez Valdez-Scantling. They have a guy coming off of an injury that the guy from Denver, and now his name's escaping me, the burner,
KJ Hamler or
KJ Hamler. Yeah. That, could be the speedster. But to me, unless you're going to go out and add a Brandon Ayuk or a T Higgins, to me, there's just no value in bringing in another okay receiver. You might as well just see what you have. And that's kind of how I feel about defense. Now, there is a name out there that's interesting. And maybe when we get going in this conversation, this is the position we're going to start with. But Justin Simmons is a guy at safety that has played at a very high level for the last few years, and he's still a free agent. You have to ask yourself why. Micah Hyde's still a free agent, by the way. He has not announced his retirement yet, for what that's worth. But when you look at this Bills defense, Luka, overall, what is your confidence level in this defense as it's currently constructed if they were to take the field tomorrow and kick off the season?
Uh, it's not as confident as I would be in years past. I will put it that way. But it's not like I'm sitting here with a huge negative light on it either. I think there's obvious question marks with it where there are concerns. There's smaller question marks sprinkled all along it, I think, at all three levels of the defense. But on top of it, of course, that back end, you bring up Justin Simmons. That is the biggest question. You even put out a tweet that even kind of pulls to this, where we asked, who do you expect to start? Or I don't remember how you worded it. Is it expect, or maybe who do you think?
Which current Bills safety are you most confident in saying will be a week one starter?
So essentially, who do you think will be week one starter? So it's that one where, and a lot of our feedback was kind of leaning towards Mike Edwards. And I think that was a little bit surprising to both of us because it feels as if the staff really does like Taylor Rapp. And if there's one safety that you would have to kind of bet on that you feel is best to be a week one starter, he would be the guy at strong safety, for whatever it's worth. And the safety position is a big question mark. So then that idea of Justin Simmons does kind of creep into your head. And Justin Simmons is a phenomenal player. Obviously, he's an all-pro kind of safety. And you do have to wonder why we're sitting here mid-July now and he has not kind of signed the dotted line with anyone. Is there a health concern maybe? Is he just asking for too high of a number from a team? Is he maybe just playing the kind of vet game you hear about nowadays where he's not going to sign until later in the preseason, where he can avoid all of the training camp and workouts because he feels it's not necessary to him, and or he just doesn't want to get banged up at that point in time. You hear about other vets later in their careers doing the same thing. There are ones that are happier to sign on a roster come right before the season, and or if they're really aging, they are very comfortable with not signing until even mid-season time where they can get warmed up with a contender so that come playoff time, they are good to go. It's definitely a question mark, but overall, I wouldn't be overly concerned with this defense. You still have all of your staples, right? You still have Taron Johnson in the slot. I'm, doing this in a weird order, but Taron Johnson in the slot. You have your corners of Rasul Douglas and Christian Benford out on the perimeter. As long as they can both remain healthy, you should feel good with those three across the board there. You have Terrell Bernard coming back, of course. Hopefully he can continue to grow after that incredible bump of a season that he had last year. Ed Oliver, again, can he keep progressing forward? Because last year was great, and then the other question mark that I truly have to kind of wrap it up here is Matt Milano. And again, for what it's worth, Daquan Jones, even though he did play in the playoffs, it's not like he was even anywhere close to 100%. Those guys are coming off major injuries. Can they get back to the same form 1 year later in their life coming off those major injuries? Because as great as Terrell Bernard was, obviously that other weak side linebacker spot there was a concern. You had AJ Klein covering Travis Kelce in a divisional round
covering.
Yeah, right. Air quotes there. Covering Travis Kelce. It didn't work out very well. And you need Matt Milano back to hopefully fill that void. Is he going to be that same guy coming off a pretty serious leg injury? I don't think it's a safe. You can't sit here and safely assume he's going to be your all-pro guy again. Hopefully he's still very, very good. It just also feels irresponsible to assume he's going to be all pro all over again. That's a big, big injury that it might take him a full year to even get comfortable again. And you're just going to see him we're not going to see hopefully a Von Miller dip in performance coming off a serious injury, but it's almost like you need to bet on he won't be his all pro 100%. And he's going to be, let's say 85 to 90%, whatever it might be based on his recovery and so on and so forth. It's that thing that there are enough questions there that I feel like it's the most questions we've had on a Sean McDermott defense probably since he was hired, maybe outside of that first season. This is definitely a year where I go, okay, I can absolutely see path 1, 2, and 3 for why they're not successful on defense. And I don't think that's ever been the case with McDermott. So there are absolutely question marks with it, but I'm not sitting here thinking that it's going to be, I'm going to be closing my eyes when the opposition offense is out there and these guys are incapable of doing their jobs. I trust in McDermott for at least coaching them and getting them all understanding of what the job is, evaluating the talent that they have, and putting the best 11 that he believes to run that system out there to find the most successful way to do it. And drafting a guy like Cole Bishop, who in my eyes, I believe will slate in to start week 1 at free safety next to Taylor Rapp. And then you have another guy who will be rotating in and have some sort of a key role in Dwayne Carter that I know you're a little bit higher on than I am. But regardless, those are impact guys that hopefully we haven't had that will be able to make that impact to keep things afloat and decent on that defensive side of the ball, that we don't see too much of a dip with all these question marks.
Yeah, they're going to need some contributions from their draft class. That's for sure. Not just from Keon Coleman, who we talked about last week, but you mentioned the two big ones, Cole Bishop and Dwayne Carter. I want to go back to Matt Milano, though, because if there's one thing we should be used to as Bills fans, the last couple years, it's watching a former All-Pro defensive player battle his way back from a significant lower body injury and not being the best version of himself, or in Von Miller and Tre'Davious White's case, even remotely close to the best version of himself the following year. Tre'Davious White didn't even take the field until Thanksgiving the following year. That same day, Von Miller tore his ACL. And last year, he took the field in London. If you forgot, that's okay, because he didn't make a single splash play what felt like the entire year. Maybe he was getting it going late. I feel like, and I'm not trying to make a joke because it was a serious injury, but it sure felt like people were looking for any kind of false positive they could have with Von Miller, because that is a massive contract, although he did the team a solid this offseason, basically taking a pay cut. But as far as Milano goes, I think we have to kind of learn from our past mistakes. If you were somebody that thought, oh, we're getting Trey White back, our cornerback situation is set, or, oh, we're going to get Von Miller back, we're just fine. I think there's a real possibility that Matt Milano is not a high impact player this year. And maybe it is can we just ramp him up to where he is a B+ player by the time the playoffs roll around? And that's where I think the conversation needs to start, Luka, because Terrell Bernard last year was a massive surprise. And maybe this year's version of Terrell Bernard is a guy that had the same trajectory as Terrell Bernard. 3rd round draft pick from the year before, very limited playing time. When he was on the field, you were like, whoa, that's not what it's supposed to look like. But then you kind of watch him play and you're like, there's an athlete in there. And, they did insulate themselves at linebacker, I think, very well this offseason with a couple of vets and Nicholas Morrow, who, I think he proved in Philadelphia he's no longer a starting caliber player. But if you need a guy to get you through a month of football with an injury, I think he's perfect for that. Deion Jones, a former high impact player for the Falcons, who just really saw his career kind of fiddle out with injuries. We'll see what they can squeeze out of him. Balen Spector is a guy that's been battling injuries, but actually been somewhat impressive when he's been on the field. But Dorian Williams, Luka, he could be the guy that we're all just kind of forgetting about, that second year in the defense. Maybe he comes out of nowhere. What do you think? Those 4 guys, we can throw in the 5th round pick. I hate having to try to pronounce his name. It sounds so disrespectful, but Edufan Ulo-Fushio, he reads
Solid.
really well. What do you think about the depth that they have built behind a linebacker situation? Because to me, it reads like Brandon Beane said, no matter what, I'm not going to be in a situation where AJ Klein is covering Travis Kelce in the playoffs.
Your last sentence is spot on. That's exactly what this looks like. I will say, the Dorian Williams thing does tickle my fancy in all the right way. It's like, man, if they can absolutely replicate what you just did with Terrell Bernard and get that out of Dorian Williams next to him, boy, are you feeling great about both your linebackers for the next 2-3 years, where then you get into the same situation where you're like, shit, we have to pay one and we're going to have to let one go. Mm-hmm. That's where we're going to be here. Cause you don't pay both. You just don't do it. That's irresponsible to your cap. But at the end of the day, with the situation where it is, going back to the original point, how many more cliches, how many more transitions can I put in there? It's irresponsible to say Matt Milano, as we're saying, is going to be 100%. It's irresponsible to believe that he's going to be a bona fide all-pro player. He's going in there day one. He's going to be great. I love that everyone out there is excited about it. it's not like we're not excited about it. We're just going to be a little bit more cautious with this and understand that it was a serious leg injury. And what are we actually expecting to get out of him? Because it shouldn't be an all-pro player. It shouldn't be an A+ player if we're putting a letter grade on it, because I love that you say a B+B player. That's where then the Dorian Williams conversation comes in. And then if you don't hit the lottery twice with your third round linebacker pick, and Dorian Williams isn't yet another stud all of a sudden out of there, I think they did do a good job bringing in Amaro, Deion Jones, and drafting Ulafashio. And what they did is they really did grab three guys who I think fit a lot different molds, right? So these three individuals, they are not alike. All three of them do their own thing a lot differently. And I think they can all fill different holes in what you need out of this defense. That, yeah, if they call AJ Klein off an electrical job again, something went drastically wrong with your linebacker depth. Nicholas Morrow decided to just hang it up and call it a career. Deion Jones did the same thing all of a sudden out of nowhere. Ulafashio had a career-ending injury, just season long, we'll call it. I don't want to actually jinx it that much. And then, even other guys that you've kind of played around with when it comes to your Balin Specters or whatever are also having drastic issues that you're calling in AJ Klein, because I do think the depth right now at that linebacker spot is, at least, there's a lot more of an emergency to it. There's a lot more of a forecasting potential concerns with the position moving forward. And I think they did a good job. We're talking about Matt Milano, but of course, Terrell Bernard even got banged up at the end of last year. And they're doing a good enough job where they brought in a different variety of linebacker throughout this entire depth chart that they can really plug and play from there and bring them up to speed during the offseason. Throughout the season, you're probably going to see the likes of a Deion Jones and or Nicholas Morrow be put on the practice squad. They're not going to be game day guys for sure. And they're going to sit there and at least understand the defense, that if something were to come up, if your Balin Spector got hurt on special teams, if Dorian Williams got hurt on special teams, if all of a sudden Matt Milano's just not working out and he needs a couple weeks off because he re-aggravated something, whatever the situation is, you have someone in the ranks ready to go and figuring things out from there. And, there's also the possibility that an Ulafashio takes your Balin Spector slot when it comes to special teams because he's just working out better. And then Balin Spector is on your practice squad, whatever it is. Like, there's enough to play around. There's enough chess pieces to move around the board with the linebacker spot that you're really not putting too much weight into Matt Milano being 100%. And you actually can navigate that accordingly and figure out what's there, because you have your plan B and your plan C and even a potential plan D in the ranks on the depth chart currently as we sit here in July.
Yeah, last year it sure felt like they were just hoping anybody would step in and be okay in place of Tremaine Edmonds. This year, it feels like if for whatever reason Matt Milano can't go, they have a number of answers in-house that they would at least feel comfortable with. Let's talk about cornerback for a second, because I think one of the losses this offseason that doesn't get talked about enough is Dane Jackson. And, we've talked about the high-profile names. We've talked about Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Tre'Davious White, Mitch Morse, Gabe Davis, Stephon Diggs. Gabe Jackson's a guy that started 20 games over the last 2 seasons for the Buffalo Bills. And while he was always a guy that if he was your projected starter going into the year, you felt like, he also was a guy where if you had an injury at quarterback, you felt pretty good about Dane Jackson playing for you. Down the stretch, Rasul Douglas missed a playoff game against the Steelers, and it was like, we have Dane Jackson. We're okay. Christian Benford, he missed a playoff game against the Chiefs, and it was like, we have Dane Jackson. We're fine. Dane Jackson's gone. That security blanket is gone. And Tre'Davious White's gone. For whatever that was the last couple of years, that's the best cornerback the Bills have had in a generation, and he's gone. But I feel like there's a lot of comfort level in the fact that they have Rasul Douglas coming back, a midseason acquisition that was just an absolute home run. That was by far their best cornerback last year. Christian Benford, who outranked Dane Jackson last year, and I think he outranked Tre'Davious White. Those, I think, were the two best cornerbacks on this team last year. And if Christian Benford can stay healthy, I think he has Pro Bowl potential. I think he's that good. What is your confidence level in this cornerback group? And I do want to extend it to that Dane Jackson role, because now if they get an injury, which I think is a very real possibility with a 30-year-old Rasul Douglas and Christian Benford, who has, for as much as we love him, has not proven he can stay healthy. Now it's Kyer Elam, the next guy off the bench. What's your comfort level, one, in the starting unit, and two, with Kyer Elam being the, hey, buddy, you're up?
Starting unit, I'll start there. Starting unit, all the confidence in the world. They just need to stay healthy. Like, it is quite simple. Just please stay healthy, because the latter, or the follow up to this, is, yeah, it's, you don't have that steady Eddie kind of third next man up that it truly filled that next man up role. It's like, that was a guy who, when called upon, would at least, as I said, steady things, and just, you would feel okay with it. Is he going to make a big play for you? Probably not. Is he going to absolutely screw things up? No. He's just going to do his job, be one of 11, and just get you through whatever you need to. Are you going to want him covering, Rashee Rice 20 times? No, absolutely not. Because eventually Rashee Rice, as skilled as he was or is, will break through. But at the same time, you could be in a worse spot with your backups. Say, have a very big wild card in Kyer Elam, who you're really unsure on what he's going to do, because he is capable of the great. He is capable of making a big play, but boy, is he capable of screwing things up. Maybe him switching to number 5 is going to make him a lot more comfortable, because that's where he was in college. Who knows? But if you are relying on Kyer Elam or Jamarcus Ingram, or, rookie Daquan Hardy, if they're going to try him on the boundary and see if they found the next Terrence McGee, you probably are not feeling nearly as comfortable as you were when you had Dane Jackson. As funny as I think it is that you wanted to bring up Dane Jackson, because boy, did you love you some Dane Jackson. It is at least worth the conversation, because yeah, it's not as good. That depth area, you're not as comfortable. Knock on all the wood in the world that Kyer Elam has finally had it click and things are figured out. He has the potential, and he clearly has the brain capacity that he should hopefully figure things out. It just hasn't happened yet. And we're sitting here now 2 seasons later, or 2 off seasons later, and it's like, prayer to God that it's going to actually click for him, because if not, and he falls down that depth chart, and you're relying on Jamarcus Ingram or Cam Lewis to come through for you in that role, whatever it is that you end up kind of shuffling the board with, it's not great. It's not as good as it was with Dane Jackson. So, one, please, Rasul and Benford, stay healthy. Please stay healthy. But two, hopefully Kyer, I mean, I'm not even going to say Jamarcus Ingram, because it's not like I believe that Jamarcus Ingram will naturally get all of a sudden better. So please, Kyer Elam, can you let the light bulb turn on and figure it out game speed wise in the NFL? Like, please, because if not, yeah, a Christian Benford wrist injury again, or a Rasul Douglas, soft tissue injury. There's going to be a lot of concerns with whoever is replacing him in that spot.
It would be so massive for the Bills if Kyer Elam, the light switch, did come on, because Rasul Douglas is probably gone after this year, you would think. Taron Johnson, he just signed a contract extension. He's a nickel guy. And then, but Kyer Elam, if he has a good year, could slot in to be a starter next year. But I think there's also a world, Luka, where Kyer Elam, for, as much, here we go again, people are getting excited about him, and then training camp rolls around. If he gets outplayed by Jamarcus Ingram and Cam Lewis, I could see Kyer Elam being a guy they just trade away at the end of camp for basically pennies on the dollar, a trade that would make everybody uncomfortable with the return, where it's like swapping a 5th for a 6th or something. But it's so funny, because the day he was drafted, if I had told you this guy is going to have multiple interceptions in playoff games that swing the momentum, that lead to Bills wins, he's also going to intercept Patrick Mahomes in Arrowhead in a game the Bills barely win, but he's also a colossal bust. Like that, it's been a wild experience. I have not given up hope, because you and I, the day he was drafted, said, I like the player. I don't know if I see the fit, because he was a predominantly man cornerback coming into a predominantly zone defense. But he's a fantastic athlete with great ball skills, and we'll see what happens there. You talked about safety. We've talked about linebacker. We just talked about cornerback. I think the last real position of concern is edge, because you have the Von Miller. Is he done? Could he possibly be a better version of himself than last year? Gregory Rousseau is a guy that has, I think, been very good against the run, also has a hard time staying healthy. And I think, as much as I want to believe there's a great player in there, I have not seen enough to say that there is. I think he's been a goodish player. AJ Epinesa had the best season of his career last year. I'm obviously a fan. We went to the same high school. He doesn't know who I am. But I do think, realistically speaking, that asking him to be an every down starter is a little bit rich for what he's shown at this level. The Bills are not going to have an every down starter anyway, with as much as they rotate. They have insulated themselves with a guy like a Dwayne Smoot. It feels like Casey Toohill could be on the outside looking in after the Dwayne Smoot acquisition and drafting Javon Solomon, who seems to be more of like a third down speed edge rusher. Where are you at with this edge rush group? And how much do you think they're going to miss Leonard Floyd? How much do you think they need Von Miller to come through? Where are you at with this group?
I'm okay with it. Like, you can only do so much when you have, let's call it the first three that they do. You have Von Miller and the money, at least, that you have invested in that. And you hope that last year really was just sluggish due to initially coming back from that ACL injury. And, even though he wanted to talk to everyone and say that he was fine, he clearly was not. Like, tape doesn't lie. Gregory Rousseau, I still have hope that there's something a little bit more in there, but again, I am with you. It's fading. Is he just truly that big kind of run stuffing edge where nothing's going to get around him, but essentially he doesn't have enough of that quick twitch burst to kind of rush the passer effectively? Is that really where we're at with him? He's almost like a Lamborghini version of Shaq Lawson, where it's like he's just bigger and a little bit longer than him, but at the same time, they do the same job. AJ Epinesa, I think he's kind of in a crazy way, he's your most effective pass rusher going into the season, where then you're just, in my eyes, I think you're really hoping that a Javon Solomon can come in here and produce something a little bit different, because he's something different that they haven't really had in the McDermott era, a small, speedy edge, as you mentioned, to really emphasize that third down pass rush. If he can be effective in that role, that makes me feel a lot better, because I don't think you're going to get that from Dwayne Smoot and Casey Toohill if he makes it. It's all the same old stuff that we've had in previous years at the edge position in a McDermott era. I think Javon Solomon's the one that I circle and I go, it would be really cool if they found something in this day three guy who has clear tape in college showing that he knows how to rush the passer. If he can come in and be effective in that role that we know will be there in the rotation, and if you get maybe a little bit something more out of Von Miller in that last year before you finally let that contract off the books, I think you should be okay with that. That's fine. It's not a world beater. We don't have a Bosa. We don't have a Watt. We don't have that absolute game wrecker at edge. But in that same time, we don't play in a way, we rotate too much, where the game wrecker would be awesome. When we saw it with Von Miller before the injury, it was like, holy crap, we actually have that closer. Well, now we've just gone back to where hopefully in the rotation, they figure out kind of who can fit where, and ultimately where people can go will, as a collective unit, be effective week in, week out, because you're just not going to have one standout. If AJ Epinesa can kind of blow us away and really stand out, great. If Javon Solomon all of a sudden is just this world beater that we found in day three, incredible. If Von Miller can get back to, let's say, 85% of pre-injury 2022 form, fantastic. But they should all still be able to do their job and be able to be effective enough on the edge that it's not like we should be sitting here come late in the season and be believing that they need to, please, for the love of God, let Epinesa walk. Rousseau, in no way are we giving him contract number 2. And on top of it, we absolutely missed with our day 3 pick in Javon Solomon. Like, there should be enough contribution there that I find it hard to believe that you wouldn't be at least okay with where they're at.
Right. And there was a limit to what they could do. It would be fantastic if Javon Solomon turns out to be found money for them. But we shall see. I think a lot of this is really gonna honestly come down to what do we get out of Rousseau. Man, next week, we're gonna have a training camp episode where we talk about like the biggest storylines in training camp. And two of the storylines to me, Luka, are Gregory Rousseau and Spencer Brown, both of them eligible for contract extensions. And I think both of them are like in that danger zone of they've been good, not great. Spencer Brown certainly had the best year of his career last year, and they play positions where if you want to extend them, when you talk about the attributes they have, you're going to be paying a boatload of money. And that buyer beware. I'm excited to get into some of those conversations next week. Before we get out of here, though, I do want to touch on special teams. Unless there's anything else defensively you want to talk about, I think defensive tackle they're pretty well set. And any other positions on defense you think we need to hit on?
No, I think all our discussion was pretty spot on. Yeah, D tackles kind of just is what it is, right? Daquan, hopefully he comes back and he's of good health. Ed Oliver, as we even mentioned before, positive. Dwayne Carter, let's see what we got in him. And you have your Austin Johnson you brought in from the Chargers. Eli Yanku found his way back onto the roster. Stuff like that. So we'll see how it goes.
Let's talk about kicking and punting. I think for a while we have felt pretty good about this group. A couple years ago, they drafted the punt god out of San Diego State, and that certainly went a direction none of us were expecting it to go. And, Tyler Bass has been solid, earned himself a second contract, had a down year last year, had the lowest kicking percentage of his career since his rookie year, 83%. And then Sam Martin, who came in off the couch and replaced the punt god right before the season started, had a very strong year 2 years ago. Last year, ranked among the bottom of the league in punt averages. Now, you have to take all of that with a grain of salt because not all the punters in the league play in the winds of Buffalo. And the AFC East is a tricky division as it is because there's not any dome teams. And you have two other Northeast bad weather teams in your division. So, yeah, we understand all of that. Where are you at with confidence in this group? Do you think Tyler Bass and Sam Martin make the team? And I guess I'll just give you I don't even know if it's a hot take right off the bat. I don't think Sam Martin makes the team. I think undrafted punter Jack Browning's going to take his job. I think he has a lot of similarities to Matt Ariza, down to what school they played in, to the fact that he doesn't have the leg that Matt Ariza does. Spoiler alert, there's a reason why he was called the punt god. Not a lot of people do, but he has a stronger leg than Sam Martin. He also kicked field goals at San Diego State. I think he can handle kickoffs for the Bills, which has not been a strength of Tyler Bass's. And I think this is a good opportunity for the Bills to get a punter who's an upgrade immediately over Sam Martin on a rookie deal and have that position locked up cheap for the next few years. Let's start with punter. Do you think there's a realistic path that Sam Martin doesn't make the team coming out of camp?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the lasting memory we have of Sam Martin is not the greatest. He made a few errors. One, I mean, there's one, the one, I don't even remember when it happened, but where he was it the Denver Monday night game where he was hurt, but he was hobbling after a bad place kick? I can't remember what game that was. I just have the memory of him off an injury, trying to hustle back after a kick was either blocked or mishandled or whatever happened. And it's like, yeah, I mean, that's what you get for putting an injured punter in as a holder.
That was the playoffs.
Was that the playoffs?
The block against Pittsburgh, and then the whole story leading up to it was,
yeah.
and they decided to dress him anyway. And then the very first punt of the game, you're thinking, oh my God, we barely have a punter.
Yeah, you're right. It was later on in the season. I mean, it's a blur at this point. We acknowledged pre-recording. We're getting back in the swing of things here. We had a really nice summer vacation, basically, where so memory's not as tight, but overall, that memory is still in there. Yeah. So it's like it's not the greatest, although again, due to health, it wasn't great. But overall, yes. I can also see a path where Jack Browning, not Jake Browning, Jack Browning.
Did I say Jake accidentally?
No. I think you said Jack. I just wanted to emphasize it because it's hilarious that there's a Jake and a Jack.
Yeah.
But there is a path for Jack Browning to make this because on top of it all, fun fact for anyone that just doesn't really pay attention too much and stuff, there's something interesting as well happening in special teams this year. New kickoff rule. So
Right.
it's maybe there's even something there where Jack Browning comes in and he actually seems to handle that kickoff better. Maybe Tyler Bass handles that version of the kickoff better. There's probably so many scenarios and plans going on right now that make that more valuable now, because there's just an intrigue and an unknown with that new kickoff and how ultimately special teams coordinators are going to handle it, because you're just not gonna, maybe you still want to boot it out the back and you're happy to give it to them on the 30, whatever it is, how are they going to handle that overall? And maybe this, Browning is going to be a better piece for that. I'm sure they're going to trial it like crazy in the preseason. Like, it would almost be irresponsible if you don't. Like, if you do not try all of your kicking talent available to try out whatever it is you're trying to try out for the kickoff in the preseason, you're not doing your job right, because
Right.
it's the first time you have to even try it. So overall, there is absolutely a path for Sam Martin to not be on this team, and Browning makes it, and that is where it is. Obviously, Bass is going to be making it, not to kind of jump the gun here, but he really does kind of need a psychological bounce back after a tough finish to last season, tough second half, and of course, playoff, with ultimately the last kick he made not being the best. And we'll see how that goes. But with that even in mind, say all of a sudden Tyler Bass has the yips. That's again where Browning, if he comes in and support for whatever it is and actually can kind of carve out a place kicking role on this team as well, then you're in a better spot on top of it.
And I think it was, the way the season ended, it was very easy to be like, okay, they got to find somebody to replace Tyler Bass. But it was very early in the offseason. You and I came on the show. We were like, they would have to swallow some guaranteed money to get rid of Tyler Bass at this point. And what are you doing? I mean, who are you going to find on the street that's better than him, particularly now that it's July 14th? I do think the right move was to stick with him and see if he can recapture some of what he had in previous years. And maybe you want to hope that it was something with the Sam Martin thing, and maybe Jack Browning, who didn't hold in college because he was the place kicker, can come in and get that rapport going. This is like, just like Matt Ariza, like, can he hold? We know he can punt. San Diego State. But we shall see. It's funny, Luka. Our post-game show the night that the Bills lost to the Chiefs in the divisional round, we both kind of shared a brain where it was like, I don't blame Tyler Bass. I was mad when the field goal attempt was made because
Yeah.
I knew that Patrick Mahomes was going to go down and kick the game-winning field goal or get them into field goal range. And they have Harrison Butker, who's had an interesting offseason himself, apparently. But the more time that has gone on, the madder I've gotten about Tyler Bass missing that kick. Now, I'm not mad enough to ever endorse the abuse he took on social media. Social media is pretty disgusting. But the more I think about it, I'm like, okay, like, no, what the list of things I was mad about that night, because I felt like even if he made the kick, we were just setting ourselves up for a Mahomes drive down. I'd still, when he misses the kick, Pacheco had to run twice and the game was over. At least the defense had a chance to make a play. You extend the game, and that's a very makeable kick, especially when Harrison Butker is making kicks in that stadium on the other end when he's not used to the winds and it's going in easy. Bass needs to rebound. I've gotten madder as the offseason has gone on, and I'm not as confident in Tyler Bass as I was a year and a half ago. I do want to see him get back some of that consistency, or else as the season goes on, finding a new kicker the next year is going to be a higher priority for me. You and I are sharing a brain, though. Tyler Bass will be this team's kicker, both because of the contract, because of the lack of competition, and because as bad as he was by his standards, there's not a better option out there. So I think all of that combined with the fact that who you're going to find that's used to kicking in the Buffalo wins, it's better to write it out with Bass. I think you and I share a brain. Bass will be the kicker, and there is a true competition at punter. Any final thoughts, Luka, before we get out of here?
No, I mean, one last thought I'll honestly kick in there is I'm sad that you didn't get to kind of emphasize how excited you are for Daquan Hardy as a returner. But overall, I mean, outside of that, no, pretty much I am with you on that. Fingers crossed that they somehow found a Terrence McGee 2.0 or just, clone that can be dynamic as a returner, and then all of a sudden maybe even sprinkle in some corner work. Obviously, Terrence McGee was a steady boundary corner. That's what made him extra special and
Mm-hmm.
electric. But overall, if they even find kind of 0.75, we'll call it, of Terrence McGee and Daquan Hardy, and he is an Energizer Bunny, an electric factory as a returner, it would be nice to maybe have some positive upside to a return game. Although, again, I just want to emphasize it once more, with the kick return side of it, we have no idea what to expect. So I'm not even going to begin to kind of think about what a returner will look like at that, because who knows? My favorite point, and I'll finish with this. My favorite point was when that rule was made, there was an argument being had on why the Chiefs then signed that fast rugby player, because it's like, maybe that is the style of returner you want now. Some built guy with some still having some good amount of speed to him, that's just going to break through that one line and then just shoot out like a bottle rocket. You know, that returner could change, where you're not just looking for that shifty fast guy, where now you need someone that's built to kind of squeeze through a seam and still have open field speed. And it will be fascinating. For the first time in a while, Josh, I will be intrigued by something in preseason football. And crazy enough, it's just going to be kickoffs. I want to know what the hell kickoffs are going to look like now, because I do believe there's going to be multiple trains of thought. I think across the league, special teams coordinators are going to try to be that guy that cracks the code first. And there's probably plenty of ways they have thought about it, but no one truly knows until you put the pads on and you play a competitive game. So it will be intriguing to kind of watch how teams are doing it differently and who's really trying to go for it. You know, are the Dolphins going to put Tyreek Hill as a returner now all of a sudden? Because realistically, if Tyreek Hill can break through that line of everyone standing still and blocking, holy shit, a kicker ain't tackling Tyreek Hill. So, you know, it will be very, very intriguing when that time comes.
I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see what comes of it. And, you know, I will say the last time you were excited about anything preseason wise was Matt Araiza.
Oh,
And
Jesus.
you were at a game openly hoping that the Bills would go 3-and-out so you could see your boy jump on the field and how far he could punt it.
It's a great point.
All right. Well, next up for Luka and I and Bills fans is training camp. Our next week's episode is going to be a training camp primer. We're going to be getting you ready for all things Bills training camp, with a list of our biggest storylines heading into training camp, whether it is position battles, players that are due for contracts. What is this season going to look like for Josh Allen without Stephon Diggs, without Gabe Davis, without Mitch Morse? All the biggest questions surrounding these 2024 Buffalo Bills, we are going to kick around. We're going to talk about, and we're going to have some fun with it. We can't thank you enough for watching this. We are back in the saddle. We are back on our regular weekly rotation. Watching us on YouTube, we appreciate it. Bills Chat Podcast. Follow us on Twitter, Bills Chat Pod. I'm Bills Chat Josh. He's also has Sabres Chat Pod, Luka, with the Sabres Chat. For Luka, I am Josh McCarty. We will talk to you next week on Bills Chat.